an integral part of your journey, knowing that each step forward, even in the face of adversity, is a step closer to your true self. Another truth that will completely transform your life is this: the people you surround yourself with have the power to elevate or diminish your energy. You become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. This is not just a saying, it's a law of attraction. If you surround yourself with people who see your potential, who encourage your growth, and who believe in your dreams, you will rise to meet that energy. Guard your energy fiercely. Let go of toxic relationships, of people who drain you, who belittle your dreams, or who feed you negativity. These people are not in alignment with the life you are creating. You are not obligated to stay in environments that don't serve your highest self. You must make the decision to surround yourself with people who uplift, inspire, and challenge you to become the best version of yourself. And here is the greatest truth of all. Belief is the catalyst for everything. What you believe about yourself, about life, and about the world around you shapes your experiences. Your beliefs create the lens through which you see everything. And the moment you change your beliefs, the world changes to reflect that new belief. Here's the ultimate truth bomb. Your belief is your reality. If you believe you are capable, if you believe you are worthy of success, love, and happiness, the universe must reflect that back to you. When you change your belief about yourself, the world changes. You hold the key to unlocking your greatest potential, and that key is belief. Finally, life is not something that happens to you. It is something that happens through you. You are the creator of your reality, and the world around you is a reflection of your consciousness. The moment you take full responsibility for your thoughts, emotions, and actions, you begin to create a life that aligns with your highest self. The world you see around you is not set in stone. It is the product of your mind, your beliefs, and your imagination. You are the artist, and life is your canvas. With each thought, each belief, and each action, you are painting the masterpiece of your existence. The power to shape your life lies within you, and once you accept this truth, everything begins to change. You are the sculptor, and your thoughts are the chisel. Every belief you hold about yourself and the world is the very material with which you carve your reality. When you start to believe that your life is a reflection of your mind, you begin to consciously craft the masterpiece that is your future. The world has been telling you to look outside for answers, for validation, for success. But the truth is, the world is only a mirror reflecting your inner state. When you decide to look inward, to face yourself with honesty and love, you will start to see everything around you shift. You will see people, situations, and opportunities line up to reflect the change you've made within.
The will uses
it's a
their
law
striving
of the universe.
To sustain life,
as
not
within,
to grant meaning to
so
it.
without.
And what happens
your
when the
outer
mask is torn
world is a
away?
projection
When
of
the
your
worker
inner
realizes
beliefs.
his labor ends only
And
in weariness.
when you decide
When the
that you
lover
are
discovers
worthy
that
of
passion
greatness,
is nothing more
worthy
than
of
nature's
abundance,
cruel trick to
worthy
ensure
of all the
reproduction.
success
When
and
the
love you
artist sees
desire,
that beauty itself
the
is
universe
fleeting,
will meet you
subject
at
to the
that
decay
level.
of time,
You stop
then man
chasing
is left staring
and start
into the void,
attracting.
and he feels
Your
what few
vibration
can
will
bear to
shift,
name.
and as you
The
hold the
emptiness
belief
of
that your
existence.
desires are
Boredom
already
emerges
fulfilled,
like a shadow
the world will
whenever
begin to
striving
reflect
pauses.
that reality.
A man wins what
This
he
is why
longed for,
belief is the
then he
most
yawns,
powerful
for
force
his
in the
inner
universe.
emptiness has not been
It
filled,
transcends
only
circumstance.
postponed. He
It
must
transcends
seek another
logic.
goal, another
Belief
game,
is the
another
seed from which
conquest,
your reality
or else
grows.
The nakedness of life will
When you
become
believe in your own
unbearable.
worth and power,
Boredom is the proof
you
that
unlock the
existence
ability to
itself
create your
has no
life
positive
exactly as you
content.
imagine
It is
it.
not joy, but
You
the
are not a
suspension
victim of
pain.
chance,
And when pain ceases,
nor are you at the mercy of
nothingness
others.
presses in.
You are the
One runs
master of
forever,
your
not
fate,
because he is free,
and the moment
not
you
because
believe
he
in your own
chooses,
creative
but
power,
because the lash of the
universe
will
has no
leaves him
choice
no
but to
rest.
align with
He
you.
must keep moving,
Let go of
even
the
if
need
each
to
step
control
carries him
every
closer
aspect
to
of your
despair.
life.
What is
The
this
universe
force
has a
that
plan
drives
for
us?
you far
It is
grander
not
than your
reason,
mind can
for reason merely
comprehend.
calculates the
When you
means to
surrender
ends
control
already
and
given.
trust in the
It is
process,
not morality.
you release
For
the very
morality is but a
resistance
thin
that keeps
veil
you stuck.
draped over instinct.
You are
Nor
not here
is
to
it
force
divine
life to
inspiration.
bend to your will,
For divinity
but
is
to
only
align
the
yourself
projection
with the
of our
natural
fear
flow
and
of
desire.
abundance and
No,
creativity
the
that
force
exists
governs
all
us
around
is
you.
older,
You do not
darker,
need to
and
release
entirely
anything, you only
indifferent.
need to
It
forget
is the
what is
will.
not true.
The will is the essence
All
of
that you
existence.
desire already exists in you now.
It does not foresee.
The moment you assume it, the past dissolves and the new state claims you.
It
is not letting go.
Of life.
It is awakening.
That cracks stone
when you
to
release
reach
these,
sunlight.
you
The
make
insect
space
that
for
gnaws
something
through
greater
wood.
to take their
The lion
place.
that tears at
The
flesh
future you
of the
desire
gazelle.
is already
It is
in
also
motion.
the man who
And the
hungers
more
for
you let
wealth,
go of the
for
need
power,
to figure it
for
out or
recognition,
make it
and
happen,
even for life
the more
itself.
effortless
Will
your
is not
creation
something we
becomes.
possess. It is
Trust
what
the
we are.
process.
Consider this
Trust
carefully.
that the
You call
universe
yourself
knows the
an
best
individual,
path for you.
a self.
You don't
But what
need
is
to
this
know
self,
every step.
if not the stage
You
upon
only
which
need to
the
believe
will
the path
performs
will
its unending
unfold
play?
as
You
it
may
is
imagine
meant
you
to.
direct your own course.
The moment you
but when
surrender to
hunger
this
grips you,
truth,
when lust
you begin to
inflames
live
you,
from a
when
place
fear
of
chills
peace,
you,
knowing
what
that
becomes
all
of
is
your rational
unfolding
freedom?
perfectly.
It vanishes.
The
like
universe
mist
is guiding
before
you
the sun,
toward the life you've
revealing
always
the
dreamed
truth
of. It's just
that you are
waiting
not
for you to
master of
trust
your
that
body,
it's already
nor
yours.
of your mind.
Here's
but
the most
servant of
powerful
force
truth of
that
all.
neither loves
You
nor
are
spares
already the person
This
you
will
are trying
does
to
not
become.
rest.
The highest
Satisfaction is
version
not
of
its
yourself
goal.
already
Satisfaction
exists
would
within
be
you,
death. The
waiting
will
for you
keeps
to step
alive
into it.
precisely by ensuring
Your future
that
self
peace
is not a
impossible.
distant version of
Every desire fulfilled gives birth to another, sharper and more demanding, like the heads of Hydra multiplying as they are struck down. To live is not to enjoy life, but to endure this endless compulsion, to strive without release. Do you think this striving leads to progress, to some glorious culmination of history? Do not be deceived. The will knows nothing of history, nothing of progress. It simply repeats itself in endless cycles. Empires rise and fall, technologies advance and decay, philosophies bloom and wither. Yet beneath all this movement, nothing truly changes. The form alters, the essence remains. Desire, struggle, disappointment, repetition. Humanity congratulates itself for its inventions, its conquests, its knowledge. Yet, all of this is nothing but a more elaborate way of suffering. And observe, the greater the striving, the greater the suffering. The man who wants little suffers little. The man who wants much suffers endlessly. The genius, tormented by visions, suffers more than the dull laborer, who seeks only bread and rest. The ambitious man suffers more than the content peasant, but the peasant too is not spared, for sickness, loss, and death find him all the same. No one escapes. Even kings, who imagine themselves favored, are plagued by the same unrest. A crown may weigh heavier on the head than chains on the wrist. The will does not stop at the individual. It reproduces itself, forcing each creature to perpetuate the cycle of life. Sexual desire, that fever which so often governs human destiny, is nothing more than the will's trick, compelling the individual to sacrifice peace, dignity, and often sanity in order to serve life itself. Nature deceives us with the intoxication of passion, but behind the ecstasy lies nothing but the command. Multiply, continue, feed the fire of existence. We think ourselves lovers, but we are only the vehicles of the will, its instruments of continuation. Even death does not liberate us, for while the individual perishes, the will itself does not die. It surges onward, embodied in other forms, unceasing. The same force that once animated your ancestors now animates you, and will animate those who come after. You vanish, but the will persists, and with it the endless striving and suffering of life. Is it not a cruel joke? You are thrown into being, compelled to strive, promised fulfillment, but given only hunger, granted pleasures only as fleeting intermissions between torments, and finally dismissed into death while the will, indifferent, continues to enslave countless others. This is why life feels empty and pointless, because it is empty and pointless. Existence is not a story moving toward fulfillment, but a wheel that turns without destination. The more one clings to the illusion of meaning, the more brutal the awakening when the illusion collapses. The man who believes in progress, in love everlasting, in eternal truths, he will suffer most when confronted with the reality of decay, betrayal, and the silence of the grave. And yet, men prefer illusion. They gather in herds, not because they love truth, but because illusion shared feels less unbearable than truth endured alone. Religion, nationalism, ideology, the cult of progress, these are narcotics administered to dull the sting of existence. They are the opiates of the masses, not because they elevate, but because they anesthetize. Without them, men would collapse under the weight of futility. But is it not more dignified to suffer awake than to dream under anesthesia? Is not clarity, however bitter, preferable to sweet deception? For in deception, one is still a slave, whereas in clarity, one begins to see the possibility of detachment. To know the will is to weaken its hold. The man who recognizes the nature of his striving begins, at last, to glimpse the faint outlines of escape. What, then, is pleasure? People exalt it as if it were something positive, as if it were a reward for living. But in truth, pleasure is nothing more than the brief relief from suffering. Hunger gnaws at the body, and food provides a momentary escape. Thirst torments, and drink silences it for a moment. Lust inflames the blood, and release quells it, only to return with greater force. Thus, all pleasure is merely the cessation of pain. When the suffering subsides, the so-called pleasure arrives, not as a true gain, but as a reprieve from torment. And when suffering is absent, what do we call that state? We call it boredom. Life oscillates perpetually between these two poles, pain and boredom. There is no third condition. Either we are tormented by want, or we are tormented by emptiness. The festival of life promises joy, but delivers only the shifting scenery of these twin torments. A man rushes from craving to craving, hoping for peace, yet when his desires are still, he cannot bear the silence. The empty hours press on him like a weight, revealing the absence of all positive content. This is why men so feverishly invent distractions, entertainment, gossip, trivial ambitions. All these are desperate attempts to evade the void. Cities overflow with theaters, taverns, arenas, and endless chatter, because man cannot endure himself. He fills his days with noise, so that the silence of existence does not devour him. What is the clamor of the marketplace, the frenzy of politics, the roar of war, but the thunderous laughter of a herd terrified of its own boredom? The animal suffers hunger, thirst, and danger. But when these are satisfied, it rests. Man, however, suffers also from the burden of consciousness. He knows time, he anticipates death, and he confronts the emptiness of all striving. Thus, his suffering is greater than that of any beast. If one were to weigh the pains of the world against its pleasures, would not the scale collapse beneath the weight of anguish? A single cry of agony outweighs hours of fleeting contentment, for pain is felt in its full sharpness, while pleasure is only the shadow of pain's absence. Consider how carefully nature guards life, and yet how cruelly it treats it. To eat, one must kill. To survive, one must devour. Every act of nourishment is built upon the suffering of another. The hawk tears the dove, the cat torments the mouse, the man slaughters the beast. And within mankind itself, the struggle is just as merciless. The strong dominate the weak, the cunning exploit the foolish, the ambitious trample the meek. Civilization polishes the surface, but the essence remains red with blood. What is war but the naked revelation of this truth, when all the masks are torn away and the will shows its teeth? Man, so proud of his intellect, uses it not to escape the will, but to serve it more efficiently. His reason sharpens his claws, multiplies his desires, and makes him more restless than any beast. With fire, he destroys forests. With machines, he enslaves millions. With science, he probes the secrets of nature not to free himself, but to bind himself more tightly to the striving of the will. Knowledge does not liberate him, it arms his servitude. He imagines himself advancing, but he is merely constructing ever more elaborate prisons for his own discontent. Even art and philosophy, those rare blossoms of human existence, are not spared. Most art serves as distraction, mere entertainment for the herd. Philosophy itself often collapses into sophistry, justifying illusions rather than unveiling them. Only in rare moments, when the mind tears itself free from the chains of the will, does man glimpse something beyond striving. In those fleeting intervals of aesthetic contemplation, he is no longer a slave of desire, but a pure, will-less subject. Yet such moments vanish quickly, like the trembling reflection of the moon on dark waters. You may ask, if the will is so blind and merciless, why does it exist at all? But such a question is meaningless, for the will is not rational, nor does it answer to reason. It has no why. It simply is. To seek a purpose behind a will is to misunderstand its nature. Existence has no purpose beyond the continuation of striving. The cosmos itself is not the unfolding of a divine plan, but the endless storm of the will manifesting in form after form, world after world, without aim, without rest, without sense. Thus, the deeper nature of life stands revealed, an unceasing torrent of desire, suffering, and futility. The human heart, so easily deceived by hope, so quick to believe in progress or redemption, is in truth a battlefield upon which the will wages its endless war. We are not the authors of our destiny. We are pages written by a hand that does not care, in a language we cannot alter, for an audience that does not exist. Look around you. Do you not see the restless convulsions of the will etched everywhere in human history? Do you not hear its roar in the wars, the revolutions, the frenzied pursuit of wealth and power? Humanity, despite its speeches of dignity, reveals itself as a slave to craving, and its monuments are tombstones erected over illusions. Consider war. Nations rise not out of reason necessity, but from greed, fear, pride, and lust for domination. The Trojan War, was it fought for justice, or because a king desired another man's wife? The Crusades, were they a march of faith, or the will's intoxicated frenzy masked in piety and bloodshed? Modern wars, clothed in rhetoric of freedom or progress, are no less the outpourings of the same blind striving. Millions march to death because rulers crave land, because merchants crave markets, because egos crave glory. History is drenched in corpses, and the will feeds upon them as fuel for its endless fire. And what of revolutions? Men rise against kings, imagining they break their chains. Yet after every overthrow, new rulers emerge, and the same cycle of domination begins anew. The French Revolution promised liberty, equality, fraternity. What followed? The guillotine, the terror, and at last the empire of Napoleon, another tyrant, crowned by the same insatiable will. Progress is an illusion. Only the costumes change. The play remains the same. Humanity celebrates its revolutions as triumphs, but they are merely the will reshuffling its pawns. Examine the pursuit of wealth. Here, too, the will reveals itself in its raw form. The miser hoards coins as if they could shield him from death. The merchant schemes day and night, devouring rivals and expanding empires. The laborer sells his hours, his very body, for wages that never suffice. And to what end? Riches never silence hunger, they only multiply desires. The wealthy man suffers no less than the poor, for his wants expand infinitely, while his body remains the same fragile, decaying vessel. His banquet ends in indigestion, his palace in ennui. Thus wealth is no escape from the tyranny of the will, but merely another stage on which its futility plays out. Turn now to love, the most deceptive of all illusions. Lovers speak of eternity, of union of souls, of destiny. In truth, their passions are nothing more than the will's demand for reproduction, dressed in the poetry of sentiments. A man sacrifices fortune, honor, even life itself, for the possession of another. Yet what drives him is not his own interest, but nature's cunning trick, to perpetuate the species at any cost. Many of the great tragedies of history, the fall of empires, the deaths of heroes, the ruin of families, can be traced to this cruel deception. Helen's beauty burns 1,000 ships. Antony loses the world for Cleopatra. Kings risk kingdoms for mistresses. All of it is the will, laughing through the theater of passion. Consider also the fate of thinkers, those rare individuals who sought truth. Socrates was condemned, not for falsehood, but for disturbing illusions that the herd could not bear to lose. Giordano Bruno was burned, not because his vision of the cosmos was wrong, but because truth was an offense to the narcotics of belief. Even Christ, whom many worship as divine, was crucified for daring to pierce the veil of convention. The fate of such men shows how desperately humanity clings to illusion. The herd would rather destroy its seers than face the nakedness of existence. And look at our modern age. Does it differ? Nations intoxicate themselves with the idea of progress. Machines multiply, cities expand, knowledge proliferates. Yet, what is the result? A life of greater noise, greater speed, greater distraction. Men are chained to their devices, their attention shattered into fragments. They mistake the acceleration of life for its enrichment, when in truth, it is only a more frantic attempt to evade boredom. The same hunger, the same emptiness, the same futility now dressed in electric light and digital images. Observe the cult of celebrity, where crowds worship those who appear to embody fulfillment. They project their longings onto singers, actors, athletes, as if these idols had escaped the fate of the ordinary. Yet behind the masks, these figures are often the most tormented, driven to despair by the emptiness of the applause. Fame does not soothe the will, it inflames it. And so, the adored descend into madness, intoxication, or early graves. The herd, however, does not see this. It craves illusions, and will pay anything to keep them alive. Even religion, which claims to elevate man above suffering, serves largely as another mask for the will. Most believers do not seek liberation, but consolation. They pray not to escape desire, but to fulfill it health, wealth, victory, paradise. Faith becomes another currency of striving, a spiritual marketplace where men bargain with heaven. The true religious impulse, which glimpses the renunciation of will, is rare and often suppressed by the very institutions that claim to embody it. History is thus nothing but the chronicle of the will's endless striving. Wars, revolutions, loves, discoveries, glories, and disasters all are variations of the same theme. The blind surge of desire, its fleeting satisfactions, and its inevitable disappointments. From the pyramids of Egypt to the skyscrapers of New York, from the chants of priests to the algorithms of machines, mankind performs the same play in different costumes. The stage changes, the actors come and go, but the script never alters. So I ask you, when you see the monuments of civilization, do you not also see the ruins they conceal? When you hear the hymns of progress, do you not also hear the cries of those crushed beneath its march? When you look at the face of a lover, do you not also see the shadow of betrayal, of aging, of death? Everything that shines is only a disguise for the will, and behind the mask lies the same inexorable suffering. Think of the Roman Empire, so often exalted as the pinnacle of order and civilization. What was it, in truth, but the will's orgy of conquest? Legion upon legion marched east and west, leaving deserts littered with corpses. Roads, aqueducts, amphitheaters, yes, these remain as monuments, but they were built upon the backs of slaves, upon plunder and blood. Rome did not pursue wisdom or virtue, but domination. And when at last it grew too bloated, too restless, it collapsed under its own insatiability. The ruins of the Colosseum stand as a metaphor. Grandeur, built upon cruelty, now hollow, gnawed by time. The Middle Ages clothed the will in the garments of piety. Pilgrims trudged to holy shrines. Knights slaughtered in the name of Christ. Kings crowned themselves as God's chosen. Yet beneath all this sanctity, the same hungers reigned. Hunger for land, for wealth, for supremacy. Crusaders did not march only for heaven. They marched for gold, women, and dominion. Even monasteries, ostensibly refuges from the world, grew fat with land and tribute. The will does not spare even those who try to renounce it. It creeps into their vows, their rituals, their cloisters. The so-called Enlightenment, when reason was to triumph at last, did it free man from his slavery? No, it merely armed his striving with sharper tools. Science uncovered nature's secrets, but these secrets became weapons of exploitation. Factories multiplied, cities grew into vast furnaces of labor, and men were chained not with iron but with necessity. The will had dawned a new mass, progress, and so men congratulated themselves for their cleverness, even as they toiled in the smoke of industry, crushed by machines, devoured by poverty. The Enlightenment promised freedom, but gave birth to a more efficient prison. And what of democracy, that modern idol? Do the people rule themselves, or are they herded by slogans, manipulated by demagogues, intoxicated by the illusion of choice? The herd shouts, votes, revolts, but always the will steers them, whispering through ambition, envy, and fear. Politicians are not leaders of reason, but actors upon a stage where the herd demands spectacle. Behind the curtain, the same striving rages, for power, for wealth, for domination. Democracy does not abolish the will, it only multiplies its voices into a cacophony. Turn to the psychology of crowds. Gustave Le Bon observed that the individual, when absorbed into a mass, descends into irrationality. The crowd becomes a beast volatile, impulsive, cruel. Is this not the will in its purest form, stripped of individuality, surging like a storm? One moment the crowd cheers, the next it howls for blood. It builds idols in the morning, tears them down at night. The French mob dragged its king to the guillotine. The German masses hailed their Führer with fanatical ecstasy. Civilization prides itself on education, but the herd remains as primitive as ever, restless, irrational, driven by desire and fear. Even art, that supposed sanctuary of the spirit, is prostituted to the will, once it sought to elevate, to reveal truth. But in every age, the majority demand only diversion. Music becomes noise for dancing crowds, painting and decoration for parlors,
Here,
literature,
your imagination rests,
The true artist, who glimpses the world free of desire, is rare and often scorned. Van Gogh painted visions of eternity, yet he starved while the herd laughed. Kafka wrote the torment of existence, yet he was ignored until his death. The will does not reward those who reveal its face. It rewards those who conceal it. And consider the fate of individuals consumed by the will. Alexander the Great conquered half the known world by 30 and died restless, unsatisfied.
Your imagination shapes
Napoleon
reality.
crowned himself
Your
emperor,
feeling writes the
only
script.
to end a prisoner
Your
on a desolate
certainty
rock,
calls forth
gnawed
the
by
visible.
memory. These
Step now
titans,
into a
whom
forest,
history remembers as
ancient
gods
and
among
infinite.
men, were merely
Each tree
puppets
is
of
a
the will,
thought,
driven
each
to ruin
branch
by their
a
own
desire,
insatiability.
each leaf
They did
a
not
tiny
master
possibility
life. Life
waiting to be
devoured
claimed.
them, as it devours
Walk
all.
slowly.
Do not
Feel
imagine,
the soil
however,
beneath your
that
feet,
ordinary men
rich with
escape this
unseen
fate.
potential.
The peasant who works
Hear the
himself
whispers of
into
the
the
trees
grave for a
murmuring.
patch of soil.
What
The
you
merchant
imagine is
ruined
already.
by his own ambition.
What you feel is
The lover
done.
betrayed by passion.
Touch a tree.
The artist
Place your
suffocated
palm
by
against its
obscurity.
bark.
All suffer
Feel the
same,
energy of
whether crowned
creation
in gold
pulsing
or
through
clothed
you,
in rags.
through the forest,
all are slaves
through
of the
all
will.
that you have
The
imagined.
stage differs.
Let your inner
The
vision
torment
guide you to the
remains.
largest
Even
tree,
our modern
its crown
obsession
reaching
with
toward
technology
eternity.
and connection
This is the tree
reveals
of your
the same
realized
futility.
life.
The more
Its
tools we
roots drink
invent
from
to
the river of the
communicate, the
unseen.
more fragmented
Its
and shallow
branches
our
bear the
speech
fruit of
becomes.
fulfilled
The
desire.
more images we create,
Step
the
closer,
more meaningless
taste
they
its
feel.
abundance,
Social
breathe
media,
in its
that
certainty,
endless exhibition
and
of
know
vanity,
that just as
is
you
nothing
see it
but
here,
the will's chatter
it will
made
appear
visible.
in the world
Men
outside.
crave attention as they
Now,
once craved
see
bread,
a ladder rising
yet
from
the
the
attention
forest
never
floor into the
satisfies
sky.
it, only breeds
Each
more
rung
hunger.
a step of
Millions
faith.
scroll their lives
Each
away,
step a rehearsal
seeking
of the
meaning in
life you
flickering
wish to
images,
claim.
while the silence
Place your
of
foot upon the
existence
first
waits
rung.
just beyond the screen.
Feel the sway,
So let us
the
admit
reality
the truth.
bending beneath
History
your certainty.
is not progress,
Climb.
but repetition.
Each
The
movement
names
upward
change,
is an
the
assumption,
costumes shift,
a living
the stages
act of
collapse
creation.
and are rebuilt.
With each step,
but the play remains
the
the same.
world outside
Striving,
responds invisibly,
disappointment, boredom,
rearranging
striving
itself
again.
to your inner
Humanity
reality.
writes its chronicles
Do not
in blood
rush.
and tears,
Do not
and then
doubt.
calls them epics
Let
of
the
triumph.
rhythm of your
But behind
ascent
the pomp,
match
the
the
will
rhythm of
laughs
your
blind,
feeling.
merciless,
Higher and
indifferent.
higher,
If
until you
existence
pierce
is
the
a wheel of
clouds,
craving,
until the
turning
sun
without rest,
illuminates
then what
every
can the
fiber
weary
of your
spirit do
being.
but step
Here,
aside?
the
The
law
will
is
is a tyrant that
undeniable.
cannot be overthrown,
Here,
but it
your
may be
imagination
quieted,
is
not through
God in
conquest,
action.
nor through
Visualize
the
a
fever of
bridge
hope,
now,
but through withdrawal,
spanning two
through
worlds,
renunciation,
the world you see
through the delicate
and the world
art
you
of
imagine.
negating its command.
The bridge is
there
narrow,
are glimmers of escape.
but strong.
They do not
Walk
abolish
across.
suffering, but they
Feel the
suspend
vibration
it.
under
Like
your
a sudden
feet,
silence
the
between
pulse
two
of
notes
creation
endless
guiding
noise.
each step.
The first is the realm
On the other
of aesthetic
side lies the
contemplation.
reality you
when you
have
stand
assumed as
before a
true.
painting, when
Step
music flows
carefully.
through you,
Step
when the play of
boldly.
light on a
Every
landscape
thought,
seizes your vision,
every
you
feeling,
cease. For a
every
moment,
inner
to be a
rehearsal
creature of
strengthens the
desire,
bridge.
you no longer calculate,
Doubt cannot
grasp,
survive this
or
crossing.
fear. You become
Fear
pure
falls
perception,
away.
detached
You
from
arrive on the
striving,
other side,
free from the lash
and
of
the
the
world
will. These
greets you
moments
as your
are rare,
imagination
fragile,
intended.
and brief.
This is the
But they reveal
demonstration
that
of law,
liberation is not
the proof
impossible.
of your power.
They whisper of
Imagine
state
now
beyond
a chamber of mirrors,
Art in its highest
infinite
form is
and
not
luminous.
entertainment, but
Each
revelation.
reflection
It does not
is a
flatter
version
the
of your
illusions of the will,
fulfilled self,
but lifts the
living,
mind above
breathing,
them. The great
commanding
tragedian
life.
shows us life
Gaze
stripped
into
bare,
each mirror.
suffering laid
Speak
open.
to your
And in that
reflection.
recognition, we are
I
freed from our
recognize you.
personal striving,
I am
seeing
you.
our torment
You are
reflected
already
universally.
mine.
Music,
Watch as the
purest
reflections
of the arts,
converge into
speaks
one,
directly of the will's
radiant and
essence
complete,
without words,
a perfect
and in so
image of
doing,
the life you
lulls
have
it
assumed
into
as
silence.
real.
In the concert hall,
Let it
the listener
imprint upon your
dissolves.
subconscious
He becomes
mind.
the pure mirror
Let it
of
saturate
sound.
your emotions.
For a moment, he does
Let
not
it
want
become
he is.
your inner
Yet
reality.
aesthetic contemplation
From
is
this
only a
inner
respite,
reality
not a
flows the
solution.
outer
When the
manifestation.
symphony ends,
There is no
hunger
separation.
returns. When the
There is
painting
no
fades
waiting.
from memory,
There is
desire
only the
rises
law in
again.
motion.
Thus,
See the sky
a deeper
above,
path is
swirling
needed.
with
And
colors
here
of your
we
choosing,
find
gold
compassion.
for abundance,
Why compassion?
blue for peace,
Because in it,
crimson
the
for
self
passion,
recognizes
silver for
itself
clarity.
in another. The
Reach
veil
out,
of individuation,
shape
this
the sky
illusion
with
that
your feeling.
I am separate
Watch
from
it
you,
bend to
is
your
torn for a
imagination.
moment. And we feel
This
the
sky
suffering of the other
is the
as our own.
canvas of your
Compassion
creation.
softens the will's cruelty,
Stars are the
weakens its
punctuation
dominion
of your
by
certainty.
undermining the ego through which
Clouds
it acts.
are the
In pity,
signs of your
in mercy,
intention.
in kindness,
Every
we
wind,
loosen the grip
every
of
ray of
selfish
light,
striving.
every
But even
drop of
compassion
rain
does not
responds to the
dissolve the
inner
will
world
entirely.
you hold with
It is only in
unwavering
renunciation, voluntary
The
denial
universe is
of desire,
pliable.
that one
The
approaches
universe
true
is obedient.
liberation. To
The
say no
universe
to the
is your
commands of the
reflection.
will,
waiting to
abstain
mirror
from its
the life you feel
intoxications
to be real.
is the highest act
Step
of
into
freedom.
a river of light,
This is why
flowing
saints,
endlessly
ascetics,
through your being.
and sages
Its current
renounce
carries your
possessions,
desires,
pleasures,
your visions,
ambitions.
your
They do not
assumed
flee from
reality.
life in fear,
Float upon
but
it.
reject it in knowledge.
Let it wash away doubt.
They recognize
Let it
that
cleanse
striving leads
limitation.
only to
Feel its
suffering,
warmth,
and so
its
they step
movement,
aside from
its
the cycle.
divine orchestration.
Here, philosophy
Speak
converges with
silently.
religion, though stripped
I am the
of
one who
illusion.
imagines.
The mystics of
I
East
am the
and
one who
West,
knows.
in their deepest
What
teaching,
I assume as
all
real
whisper the
is
same
real.
truth.
Let the river
Salvation is
carry
not
your
the
certainty
fulfillment of
into every
desire,
corner
but
of your life.
its extinction.
Let
The
it
Buddha
shape the
called
streets
it
you
nirvana,
walk,
the
people
extinguishing
you meet,
of the
the
flame of
opportunities
craving.
that appear.
Christian mystics called it
This
union
is
with
law.
God, though what they
This
touched
is
was
power.
beyond any personal
This
deity.
is the
It was
unseen
the
made
silence
visible
of the will.
through
In the
imagination
Upanishads, the
and
self
feeling.
dissolves into the
Sit
all,
now in
which is
stillness.
nothing but the denial
Close
of
your
individual
eyes.
striving.
Feel the
Different
weight of your
words,
inner
one
reality
truth.
pressing
Liberation
against the
lies not
unseen.
in more life, but in
Breathe.
less. What
Let the
remains
rhythm
when
of
the
your
will
heart
is silenced?
match the rhythm of
Language
creation.
falters here.
Know
We are
this.
creatures of striving,
Nothing
so our
outside
words
has power
cannot
over
describe
you.
the absence
Only
of
what
striving.
you assume,
To the one still
only
chained,
what you feel,
renunciation looks
only
like
what you
death.
imagine
Yet to the
governs
one
your
who
life.
has tasted it,
You
it is
are the
peace
unseen,
deeper than any pleasure.
the eternal,
It is the
the
stillness
divine
beyond the
in
storm,
miniature.
the shore
Your
beyond the sea of
imagination
desire.
writes the
The
script.
saint who
Your
renounces
feeling
does not
animates
lose
the
life.
scenes.
He
Your
slips beyond
certainty
its
manifests
torment.
the
Do not
reality.
mistake this path
Now
for a
imagine
doctrine
a
of
vast
despair.
desert before
It is
you.
not the annihilation
Its
of
sands
existence,
stretch
but its
endlessly,
transcendence.
shimmering
To the
with
herd,
possibility,
clinging to their
golden
illusions,
under a
this
sun
appears
that never
bleak.
sets.
To the one who
Each
sees
grain
clearly,
is a seed
it is
of
the
your
only
imagined
dignity
life.
left. To
Step
refuse the
forward,
game, to
feel the
unmask
heat,
the illusion,
the
to
texture
say,
beneath
I
your
will no
feet.
longer serve.
Know that every
That is
step
the
is
highest
an act of
rebellion,
assumption.
the quiet
The
revolution
desert does
of the
not
spirit.
resist.
Thus the
It
path of
yields to
liberation
your inner
unfolds
vision.
in stages.
As you walk,
First,
the
independence
sands shift
thought
into
the courage
patterns,
to strip
forming
away illusions,
cities,
to endure
bridges,
the harshness
mountains,
of truth. Then,
rivers,
aesthetic
all
contemplation,
reflecting what
the
you have
fleeting
rehearsed in
suspension
the
of the will
sanctuary of
through
your
art
mind.
and beauty.
The
Next,
unseen world
compassion,
is
the
alive,
recognition of oneself
obedient,
in all suffering
waiting
beings,
only for your
softening
belief.
the cruelty of
Let
desire.
this truth
And
sink
finally,
into your bones.
renunciation,
Let it
the
resonate
deliberate
in your
turning
heartbeat.
away from the
You are not
intoxications
wandering.
of the will,
You are
the
creating.
acceptance of
Every
stillness,
footfall
the
is a
embrace
declaration.
of silence.
What I
Few
imagine
walk
is
this
what I
path.
bring forth.
Most
Look
prefer
up.
the narcotics of hope,
The sky
the
above this
intoxications
desert is
of
not
ambition,
ordinary.
the warm
It is
embrace
alive
of the
with your
herd.
chosen
But for those
vision.
who dare to see,
Clouds
who dare
gather
to
in
detach,
forms of
there
your
lies the
desires,
possibility of
shapes of
something
love,
beyond the
abundance,
restless cycle.
mastery,
Not joy,
freedom.
not triumph,
The
but
wind
peace,
stirs.
the one thing the will
It
cannot
whispers
give,
your intentions
the one
across the
thing
expanse.
It fears. You have
Let
seen
your
the
feeling
theater
ride
of
this
existence,
wind.
the
Let
endless
it echo
striving
into
of
the
the
outer
will,
world.
the illusions of history,
Watch the horizon
restless
bend.
hunger of the crowd.
Mountains
You
rise
have
where
seen
you
how
intended.
art and compassion
Rivers
can
carve
soften its
paths where
cruelty,
you imagined.
and how renunciation
This is the law
alone
of imagination,
whispers of liberation.
eternal
But
and
now I must
relentless.
ask you what remains
The
for
outer
you, the
world
listener.
waits to mirror
When these
the inner,
truths settle like
and you have
ash
now
upon
become
your
the
heart,
unseen
do you
architect.
still imagine yourself
Now picture
free?
a temple ahead,
When every
ancient,
impulse that stirs
luminous,
within you is the
pulsing
will's
with
command?
energy.
Do you still
Its
cling
doors
to
open
progress?
to a sanctuary
When all
inside
progress
yourself.
circles back
Walk
into the
in.
same futility,
Each step
do you still
echoes
worship
your
love,
certainty.
wealth,
The walls
fame,
are
or
lined with
power
visions
when
you have
each has
claimed
been
as real.
unmasked as nature's
The ceiling
cruel
arches
trick,
like
a
your
fleeting
assumptions,
mask upon the face
radiant,
of suffering?
infinite.
If you answer
Kneel
honestly,
if you
will
must,
feel the chill.
but feel no
All
sub-
that mankind exalts is but a painted veil draped over emptiness. Life is not a treasure to be enjoyed, but a debt to be endured. We are pushed into existence without consent, chained to desires that can never be satisfied, and finally dismissed into death, as if our torments were nothing but a fleeting gesture in an infinite void. If this truth feels unbearable, it is because your heart still clings to illusion. The will deceives you, whispering promises of meaning, of fulfillment, of happiness. But these are baited hooks luring you into its service. What then is left to see? To strip away the masks and face existence in its nakedness. To acknowledge that pain is the essence of life, that desire is endless, that boredom waits behind every pleasure. To endure the silence of truth without fleeing into noise. And perhaps, in this clear seeing, the chains of the will begin to loosen. Not broken, never broken, but loosened, enough for you to breathe. You may ask, is this not despair? But despair belongs to those who still hoped. He who has no illusions cannot despair. He sees suffering not as accident, but as essence, not as punishment, but as fact. And in accepting this fact, he ceases to struggle against it. He no longer demands from life
Vibrates
what
with
life
the energy
cannot
of
give.
creation.
In resignation
Speak
lies the
silently.
first taste
All
of
that
freedom.
I have imagined
Think of
is
the
mine.
sea. Restless
All that I
waves
have assumed
rise
is
and
done.
fall
The
endlessly
unseen
without
obeys
goal.
my
The
feeling,
fool builds
my
ships to
assumption,
conquer it,
my
imagining
certainty.
mastery. The
Let
wise
these
man
words
watches from the
penetrate
shore,
every
knowing it
fiber
will
of your
never
being.
cease. So
Let
it is
them
with
echo
life.
into the
You may
universe.
strive, you may
Feel it
conquer,
now, the
you may invent
undeniable
gods or
truth.
machines, but
The
the
outer
tide of the
world
will
is
will not
powerless
rest.
against your
Only
inner
by
conviction.
stepping back, by renouncing
the
the game,
unseen,
do you cease
the
to be its
eternal,
pawn. The path is
law in
narrow
action.
if you take it.
Move into
Most
the
will
hall of
cling to the
mirrors,
herd,
infinite,
intoxicated by the
stretching
dream of
beyond
progress,
sight.
dulled by
Each
distractions,
reflection shows a
deceived by
different
hope.
aspect
They will
of your
live
perfected
and die
life.
as the will commands.
Love,
without ever
perfected,
seeing what they were.
wealth
Perhaps you
realized,
too will return to
purpose
the illusions
fulfilled,
after hearing these
mastery
words.
attained.
Perhaps the silence
Approach
of
one
truth will
mirror.
feel too heavy,
See
and you will
yourself
seek again the
smiling,
narcotics of
radiant,
noise. That is your
unstoppable.
fate, and
Step
it too
through it.
belongs to the will.
Feel
But
yourself
perhaps,
enter that life
just
fully.
perhaps, a crack
Every
has
cell,
opened in the veil. Perhaps
every
you will
thought,
remember, in
every
moments of
feeling
boredom, in
attunes
moments
to
of
it.
grief, in
You are
moments
no
when
longer
the laughter
rehearsing.
of the herd
You are
rings
living it
hollow,
inside.
that life itself is
And because the
emptiness,
outer world is a
clothed in
mirror,
illusions.
it will
And
reflect
perhaps in
this
that
inner
remembering,
reality
you will
in
turn
perfect
away not
timing.
in bitterness,
Let the
not
other
in
mirrors
despair,
shimmer,
but in quiet
knowing
refusal.
that each is a
To serve,
possibility waiting
refusal to
only for
believe,
your attention,
refusal to be
your
deceived.
assumption,
That
your
refusal
feeling.
is dignity.
Walk into a
and
forest
it is the
of
beginning
light.
of liberation.
Each tree
So
a
I leave
desire
you with this
fulfilled.
question,
Each
one
leaf a
that no
thought made
distraction
real.
can silence.
The forest
If tomorrow
hums with life,
all your desires
energy,
were fulfilled,
movement.
every hunger fed,
Follow the path
every
of
longing
radiance.
satisfied,
The air
what
carries
then?
the scent
Would
of
you at last
manifestation.
be at peace?
Birds
Or
sing
would you,
melodies
in the silence
composed
that
by your inner
follows,
feeling.
hear again
Streams
the gnawing
ripple with the
emptiness,
motion of your
demanding more?
certainty.
And if even
Here,
fulfillment cannot
the
save
veil
you,
between
then what can?
imagination and
The question
reality
lingers,
dissolves.
unanswered.
Here,
as the will continues
witness
its
the
blind
proof that
procession.
what you
may
assume,
turn away,
you become.
may cover your ears
What
with
you
music,
feel,
fill your eyes with
manifest.
images, drown your
What you
thoughts
imagine,
in chatter. Yet the
you
silence
see,
beneath it
and now
all waits.
sit
It has
beneath
always
the
waited.
largest tree.
Listen closely.
Its
It
roots
is already
deep in
here.
it.